Hello, hello. I'm Teresa with Teresa Rene Art, live on the Pentart page. I'm also streaming on my page today. Let me know when you're on. Make sure to say hello. And if you're watching on replay, make sure to type in hashtag replay so the folks at Pentart know that you were here. Hope you guys are doing fantastic today. How's the weather where you're at? Oh my gosh, it is feeling amazing here. It is like beautiful, 70 degrees, 80 degrees. I mean, just gorgeous. I actually have my heat on right now. Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so how's the weather where you're at? Let me know. Sue, can you hear me okay? Let me know if you can hear me fine. All right. And then, so I went live. I'm just going to check my page because I set it to go live on my page too. Looks like I'm here. Looks good. Okay. All right. Yeah, it looks good here too. Okay. So hello, everybody. Hope you're doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to be talking about, we're going to be using the Artemisia line today. We're actually going to be using the acrylic paints today. Next week on Friday, we'll start working with the oils. So we're going to be using both sets of products on the piece. And in case you didn't see, I shared, this is what we're going to be working on. This is the study that I did. We're actually going to be doing a larger version of this, a 16 by 20 version of this painting. So I did a study. Sometimes I do a study, which is a small version of a larger concept. I do a study just to work out, get to help me feel more confident when I approach the bigger piece. Help me work out some problems or issues, in particular, some of the colors. In fact, this was really useful because already from doing this, I know there are a couple things that I want to change when I get to the larger version. So studies can be really useful in kind of like getting the mental preparation for a larger piece. Now, the piece that we're going to be doing is a 16 by 20, which is not huge. I needed it to be able to fit on camera. So that's why I chose the 16 by 20. Anything larger than that for the sake of a demo is just not going to fit well on camera. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming on. So I am streaming in two places today. I did go ahead and set it up to stream on my Facebook page as well, rather than sharing it. So we're live on the Pentart page. If you're watching me at Teresa Rene Art, I would love it if you would just pop over to the Pentart page and watch me from there. This is a sponsored, this is a live that I'm doing on behalf of Pentart to showcase their Artemisia line of acrylic and oil paints. And I'm so excited to share that with you guys. So we've got our study done. I've got the larger canvas prepped. So I did do some prep work because if I were to go in and do all the paste work and stuff like that, that's all we would be able to get done today because it wouldn't be dry enough to paint. So I'm going to turn my camera down and show you what I have so far. And I've raised up the view so that you can see both my canvas and my palette. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so you can see both my canvas and my palette. This isn't a canvas, though. It's actually a wood board. So I want to show y'all. This is it's a piece of, it's like, I guess it's birch wood or something like that. And it is a 16 by 20 wooden panel. And I've already sketched the painting, the outline of the painting that we're going to do. And I've done the background work already. And I don't know if you can see this very well or not, but there's some texture here. It kind of looks like burlap. You can probably see it better in my piece that I did here. I don't know, but it's raised. Okay. So I'm going to show you how I did that first before I move into the bigger piece. Again, I did prep this because if I had spent the time to do all of this prior to getting started, that's all we would have been able to do today. And I only have 4 weeks, which actually is not very long. So I'm going to just show you what I did. I took on my panel, I took the structure paste, the new Artemisia structure paste. Actually, let me back up for a second. This panel was just wood. So I actually primed it twice with the new Artemisia acrylic gesso in white. So I primed it once and then I let it dry. And then once it was fully dry, I primed it again, both with this acrylic gesso white. And this kind of creates that like surface that makes it much easier to paint on. And it also helps so that you're not painting on raw wood. Whenever you're using oil paints, you never want to paint on raw wood because the oil from the paint will actually rot the wood over time. So you always need to make sure that you have a primer on there prior to using oil paints on top of wood. And then, it's just a good idea to prime your surface anyway, regardless of what surface you're using. And as you can see, so I did use this structure paste. Pentart guys, if you're watching, I need some more structure paste because I pretty much used it all on this. But we're just going to take it and I'm just applying it with a spatula, a palette knife, and we're going to get it nice and covered on our board, and that's what I did. So I'm showing you exactly what I did on my piece. And I worked around the image that I drew. I worked around that because I want the figure to be flat. Like I don't want any texture in the figure. I want it to look as realistic as possible. So therefore, I'm just applying this texture around the figure. Okay. Of course, there's no figure here on my panel, but you know what I'm talking about. So I applied that paste, and then I took a piece of burlap, and then I just pressed it down into that texture paste and made sure it was nice and pressed down. And you guys, it's really as simple as that. That's how I got that burlap texture onto my background. Okay. And then once you pull it off, you're left with some beautiful, kind of looks like crocodile, but it's a burlap texture. Okay, so maybe I'll use this for something else, but that's how I did the background. And then this is no longer, like, you can't really use this for anything else unless you let it dry and kind of reused it kind of as a stamp or texture mat or something like that. But you could do that same technique. You could do that with lace, any other kind of fabric, or, like I've seen people use bubble wrap or something like that. But when I went around, I was just, I don't know how well y'all can see that. I was just super careful not to get into any of the parts of the figure. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're only going to concentrate. We're going to be working around the figure today. We're only going to be concentrating on the background. So this is fully dry. I actually did this on Tuesday. This is fully dry. And then once it did fully dry, I actually came back in and I put some acrylic gesso over the top of that because I'm going to be painting it. And the structure paste is actually quite porous. And it's going to absorb a lot of paint as I'm painting. So this is going to kind of help to help my painting process so that I end up using less paint overall and it flows a little bit smoother. So I did prime, once this was dry with structure paste, I did prime the acrylic gesso back over the top. All right, so as for colors today, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with raw umber, and we're going to block in just a base coat of raw umber first to kind of establish some darkness throughout the whole piece. And then we're going to, after that's dry, then we'll add some color. So let me look here at my handy dandy bag and see if I can find, here it is, my raw umber, there it is. All right. And then I'm going to clean my hands off too. Okay. Sue, I got my glasses. I was like, oh no, I didn't bring my glasses, but I do have them. Look at that. I do have them. Okay. All right. So let's get our raw umber, and we're going to put that on the palette. We're probably going to need more than that, but we'll start with that. And then I'm just going to mist my piece. This is the Artemisia, the new raw umber acrylic paint, you guys. And I did use it for, I used it for my study. It is fabulous. So we're just going to take it. I actually need a little bit bigger of a brush. Okay. So we're just going to take it, brush it a little bit, and start working that in. And I want to make sure that I have enough paint on my brush that it all gets covered and that that color actually seeps down as well into that texture. All right, so this is going to be a 4-part series, you guys. We are going to do this piece from start to finish. Starting next Friday, we will actually begin to paint the figure with oil paint. Today is all about acrylics. So why do I do the background in acrylics and do the figure in oil? Well, I'm glad you asked. So the acrylics are going to dry a lot faster, number one, than oil paint will. It's going to take about 3 to 6 months for my oil paint to really dry. So it'll be touch dry probably in about 2 to 3 weeks, but it won't be ready to varnish until about 6 months. There are some varnishes on the market where you can do it a little bit sooner, but the rule of thumb is really about 6 months, whereas acrylics will dry like literally overnight. And so I'm building up the background because I want all these layers to dry. I have so many layers on this background, you guys. And with that, with the addition of the texture and some of the techniques that I'm going to be using, I really need my my background to be dry before I begin working on the figure. Not to mention, once I start painting into the figure, my hands are going to be touching all over this piece. So if I start painting and I'm working around, trying to work around wet paint, that is not going to go so well. So if I'm doing a mixed media piece with a lot of texture in the background, I generally will paint the background in acrylic. So if I'm doing more of a realist painting where the whole thing is done in the realist kind of style where it's integrated and kind of a, you know, if I were to do like a commissioned portrait or something, you know, then I would paint the background in oils and it would sort of be harmonious. But here we're kind of doing an interpretive sort of fun abstract background, and therefore it makes sense to play around and just have some fun and explore the expressive qualities that I can bring out. Okay, so you can combine. So in other words, you can paint with acrylics first, and you can paint with, I could even paint this figure in acrylics first. And then once that's fully dry, I could come in over the top of it with oil paint and continue my works. In fact, there are some artists that do that. Like they'll do the first layer in acrylics and then come over the top of it with oils. But you can't do it the other way around. So in other words, I couldn't be painting this part in oil and then come over the top of it with acrylics later. It's just, they don't work like that. So you can use acrylics as the first layer, but beyond that, you cannot. All right, so let's bring in some more of the raw umber. I tend to use a lot of raw umber, you guys. It's kind of my, when you don't know what else to use, just add raw umber. It's kind of the default. And those of you who have followed me from my crafting careers, you might say, oh, this is kind of how she used to approach her, other projects, is paint it with raw umber first. So yeah, there's a method to the madness. It sort of helps to establish some general values. And then, it's always easier to paint something that's already been painted. If your house, that applies even like if you're painting a house, right? It's easier to paint a wall that's already been painted rather than to paint it the first time. So, yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. Okay, so I'm just trying to go around. It doesn't matter if I get into my figure too much, but I am trying to work around it as much as possible. All right. And so, if you didn't catch the live last week over on the Pentart page, I was live last Friday, and I kind of talked about all the products that I received and went through some of the new things that Pentart has to offer. I am super excited, you guys, about this new line. Tons and tons of beautiful colors, 50-something colors in acrylic paints and 40-something colors in oils. Like I said, I did use it for my study. I used both lines for my study. And I'm super impressed with how they're handling. So really, really awesome lineup, you guys. If you get a chance to get your hands on it, then by all means. I do. So I talked to David, who's the distributor now in the USA. And what he wanted me to share with y'all is if you're in the USA or in Canada and you do want to get your hands on this line, to reach out to him. You can find them on the Pentart. It's Pentart USA is their page. They're the distributors for Pentart in the USA. So you can reach out to them and they will make sure to get what you want in this new line. Internationally, there's tons of retailers internationally across Europe as well, who I'm sure are going to be getting it in. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. All right. So one thing is my burlap did leave behind a little bit of texture in terms of like lint, but I'm not too worried about that. There is some lint in here. If it's problematic, if it starts to kind of come up, what we'll do is we'll actually take some tweezers and we'll pull it out, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. All right. So you can sort of see, this is good too, because you can sort of see now the outline of the figures start to come out. So somebody asked me if, I think it was Sue. Sue, you asked me if this was a picture of me. It is not a picture of me. I subscribe to an artist. I'm on his Patreon. His name is Howard Lyon. And he's both an artist and a photographer. And he has a membership of a membership group where he takes pictures and has various reference photos that artists can use. So this is a reference photo from one of his sets. Again, his name is Howard Lyon. And what I did to create the composition, so it's his reference photo of the girl, but it's my composition. So you guys know I used to design things in Photoshop, right? I still do occasionally, but I actually placed her on my own composition, something that I thought would be super fun and interesting. I wanted some texture in there, and then I kind of like the blockiness to where she's sort of contained within this square. And then the elements of green and red, which are complementary colors. Just kind of like an elegant, I wanted it to be sort of an elegant grunge sort of feel, which I think I accomplished. So that's where I got the photo idea. So it's a reference photo that I used against my own, created my own composition for it. All right, because I've got tons and tons of graphics and material that I can use to get really creative. I know, to get super creative with the way I lay these things out. So I don't have to, in other words, you know, I was trying to do something a little bit more creative than just copying a photo when I got to this, you know, because art is not, you know, it's not about copying the photo or making it realistic. It's like, how can I interpret this subject matter in a way that's kind of fun and unique, right? So I think that's what we did with her. So we sort of brought her into this very urban setting, gave her a fun kind of grungy backdrop where she can just be sort of the center of attention. So we're calling this one Urban Dreams. And we'll let you guys sort of be the narrators of the story. Like, tell us what does this evoke in you? Like when you see her, what kind of story do you think she has? So I know what I would come up with, but art sometimes is about letting the viewer imagine their own reaction to a piece or their own narrative or story. So we're almost ready to add some color here. We are going to dry with a hair dryer. And I'm going right up to the edge, you guys. I think that was one of the mistakes I made last time is I didn't get dark enough closest to the edge. So I tried to do it with the oils. And I don't like how that came out. So I'm trying to get closer to the edge with my acrylics so I don't have to do a lot of backfilling with the oils over the top of these acrylics once I get to that stage. So I'm just trying to get right up to the edge of the figure with my paints and make sure it's uniform. Okay, so I think we got it. I think we got it there. And let's get our hairdryer out and then we'll start playing around with some color. Okay, I think we're dry enough to continue. So here's my study piece, and we're going to pull out the colors that I used for this. I think I used a little bit of black, not much. I used olive green. I'm pretty sure I used a little bit of turquoise just to kind of cool down some of the green. I don't think I used cerulean. I know I used phthalo, which is a cooler green. And I used burnt sienna, and I used yellow ochre. So those are the colors that I used to kind of create the background. Put that in my little bag here, see if I got anything else. And I may need some titanium white. Okay, so those are the colors. Let's go ahead and get some down on our palette. We'll probably need more, but we'll just start with this. And I did use red, but we'll grab that. We'll grab that later. phthalo green. This is phthalo is a very strong high chroma green, so we're not going to use a lot of that, but we'll use some of that. And this one I'll just keep to this. I don't know if I'm going to use that one or not. So we'll start with this, and then I did use more raw umber, so I'll get some of that back out as well. And we're going to be making kind of various shades of green and other earthy tones as we go through. It is relatively dark. The background will still be relatively dark. Let's grab a fresh brush. How about this one? All right, so I'm going to start with, and then I'll grab my little palette knife. Let's make a couple mixtures here, you guys. I'm going to make like kind of a darker greenish mixture here. That phthalo is quite strong, so I'm going to dial that back a little bit with burnt sienna. So burnt sienna, red and green are complements of each other. When you mix them together, basically you sort of neutralize the green. You also darken it a little bit. And then we're going to kind of do the opposite with burnt sienna. We're just going to add a little bit of green to that to make it less vibrant. Okay. And then let's do a lighter green here. We'll mix some yellow ochre into that. So we've got some pure color, and then we have a couple little shades in between, and then we can sort of start. Then I think I also want to do something even a little bit darker than this. So kind of darks, mediums, etc. I'm going to add a little bit of black to this just to kind of kill the chroma of the phthalo. That phthalo green, just be careful with it because it can really overpower a piece if you use too much of it. Maybe I'm still having trouble dialing that back. So I'm just going to add a little more olive to it and maybe even a little more burnt. There we go. So it's a little bit darker now, not quite as strong, that deep, kind of that deep green. All right. So I'm going to get a little more, let me get a little more burnt sienna here. Just pure. And let's see, one other mix that might be kind of nice is to have some burnt and raw umber. Let's do that. Maybe with a little bit of that green. Okay. So lots of kind of shades in between, y'all. And I'm going to dampen this again. This paint is going to dry super, super fast, so I need to use it quickly. And now I'm just going to come in. I'm coming in over the top and just kind of applying color, y'all, all over the canvas. This is going to be pretty random. It's not even, there's not even really, I mean, I am saving my darks for, like, I'm going to use a lot of darks over here and around the edges to create a vignette. Everything else in the middle will sort of be midtones, some of these other midtone mixtures that I created. And then, of course, I'm letting some of this, I am letting some of this raw umber from the base, I'm letting that peek through as well. I'm not trying to cover it up 100%. So I'll come back over that with So I'm just sort of randomly going a little bit grungy all over the place here. One other mix. Let's see. I already got that one there with the. So layering that in, the burnt sienna and the green. So why am I using this combination? Those are complements of each other. I have a lot of red, vibrant red in the figure, y'all, that I'm going to be painting. And having a little bit of the burnt sienna in the background is going to help kind of connect those reds when I start painting it, in the figure. It's not going to seem so out of place because I've started to introduce it in the background, y'all. So, you know, when you do paintings and compositions like this, you know, it's nice to be able to have some harmony, right? To have some harmony within the piece. And that's the purpose of the burnt sienna, is to have a little bit of harmony that flows throughout the piece. So you can see there's some touches of burnt sienna up in here that sort of say, okay, I've got this red, and then boom, I have this one. So it sort of draws your eye to the focal point, it sort of leads you around the painting. And I hope I'm explaining that well, but there's kind of a harmony to it. So, because if you had like this stark green and then you didn't have any hints that there was going to be this red, basically all you would see is this pop of red, and it might seem out of place if you didn't sort of build on it. Does that make a little bit of sense? All right, so I'm going to use I'm going to introduce a little bit more ochre in here. I'm getting a little too dark in the main area, so the ochre is going to help me lighten up some of that without introducing white just yet. We will do a little bit of dry brushing with some whiter tones. And then I'm just getting a little bit darker as I go out to the edge. Yeah, that's okay. There won't be a test. All right. There won't be a test, at least not today. And then a little bit more into here too. And then we'll come around with a smaller brush and start to get into some of those areas around the figure a little bit more. So I could have used a little bit of cracking paste in here too. Would have been fun. I do plan on doing another piece maybe with some cracking paste at some point as well. I'm loving playing around with this idea of realism combined with the abstraction of mixed media. I've started following some artists recently who do this a lot. One of them, her name is Rosso Emerald Crimson. If you don't follow her, if you like this and you don't follow her, then I suggest giving her a look. She does a lot of like large scale, beautiful. Her figures are very realistic, and then she has these really beautiful abstract backgrounds. So I'm taking some inspiration here from her, y'all. And then, of course, you know, I do have a background, if you will, in mixed media work. So it's really combining two things that I love a lot. And sort of like, if I don't want to choose how I'm feeling today, whether I want to do mixed media or a realism portrait, then guess what? I don't have to choose. I can combine those worlds together. And so that's kind of what speaks to me as an artist, is being able to not really place those limits and kind of work within, to be able to work within things that I love doing anyway, and bring that to the table, if you will. All right, so I'm coming around here. That's getting a little bit boring with all that green, so let's break it up with some burnt. All right. And again, like I said, I wanted to make these areas around the figure a little bit darker from the onset so that I don't have to try to push and match with my my oil paints later. There will be some bleed out, you know, like if I'm painting the figure inside, I will inevitably get some into these edges, and there will be some areas where I do end up painting over, but I just don't want it to be so obvious. So I'm just trying to get as close here as I can and work around it as much as possible. Even down into like these fingers. Okay. Up in here, this is going to be dark because this is a shadow side. So this part will be a little bit darker. We almost have her covered, y'all. All right. And then we'll be doing a little bit of dry brushing to kind of bring it back a little bit. None of this part shouldn't be really new, right? So y'all have all seen these kinds of techniques before. This is like the classic mixed media pentart vibes here. Let's darken these edges. Oh, come in here, do the same. Oh, and get down here. You could put some gold leaf in here. I don't know if y'all saw my lady with the gold leaf. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a second. Let's get it dry. Let's get it dry. I want this good and dry because I'm going to dry brush it. To bring out some of that, I want to bring some of that texture back. So notice I did not have any white at all on any of this background part yet, but I am going to add some white for the dry brushing part. So this is why kind of demonstrating why the acrylic is the way to go here. I would not be able to do this with oil, y'all. I've tried dry brushing with oils. It can work, but it's not the same. Basically, I would get like I would be waiting months in between, and then I would get a muddy mess. All right, so let's get this sort of grayish mixture. Let's get a little bit of titanium white into that to lighten it up, and then some yellow. So I'm just kind of getting this grayish, greenish, light mixture, y'all. It's not pure white. It's sort of a camo army green color. Okay, I kind of like that. And we're just going to take our brush and we're going to do some classic dry brushing techniques here. Let me find a paper towel so I can offload. And we're going to try to bring some of this texture out. There we go. Or just kind of go over this with a little bit lighter color to soften some of that. And we're trying to bring a little bit of this texture back to the forefront. Might need to go a little bit, might even need to go a little bit lighter. So I always start a little bit less light than I think I need, because you can always go lighter at this stage if you need to, but it's hard to recover if you go too light. So it's just sort of laying, it's not covering up that color. It's sort of just laying, laying on top of it. And then it's also kind of unifying it a little bit as well. All right, let's dry a little bit more here. Brush. Okay, I'm gonna make sure to get in to some of these little and it's just adding to the overall kind of grunginess. You can keep playing and layering. Add some, dial it back, add some, dial it back. Which I probably will do once we end this live. I probably will layer. In fact, what I did, I layered a bunch here. And then just so you kind of know, like some other steps that I'll continue to play with. I want to get my dots and my other pieces on first. But another thing I did was I felt like I got it a little too light with my dry brushing. So then I went in and I used the laser gel and I dropped some of that in. So I could do that too. I'm feeling like this doesn't need it because I did get it quite dark from the beginning. So I'm feeling like I don't need to do the antique gel at this stage, but I may decide to do that along the way. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in my dots. Let's get our ruler out. I gotta find my ruler, y'all. I should have brought it out. Here it is. All right, so let's get this out. Y'all can see how I did this. It's just paint. So I'm just kind of taking a straight edge, making sure that I'm not crooked here. And I'm gonna take some black paint. Actually, you know what we should do before we do that? Why don't we go ahead and do our stencil? Because that will actually help me line up. So let's do our stencil first. And that will help me line up my black dots. So our stencil's kind of go right along this side here. And then our color block can go right here. So let's line this up. That looks good. Let's get our stencil brush. we can use this same mixture. In fact, why don't we go a little tiny bit whiter? Let's go a little bit whiter for that. Just within this mixture here. Okay. And we're just going to do that kind of the same way. We want that to be lighter than our dry brushing was. This is the numbers stencil, y'all, from Decoupage Queen. You could use, like, I was thinking about bricks, like you could use bricks. You could use anything. But I thought it really set it off very nicely. And of course, I'm using more of it for this version because it's a larger area than I did the study. So I have an overall larger surface area that I'm working with. Okay, I like that a lot. I think that adds a ton of drama. And then we can take our edge here and we can paint our dotted line right along this edge. So I'm going to use a flat brush and I'm going to use black. Hey, Robin. Let's use a flat brush. Let's use black. And we're going to come in here with this flat edge. We're just going to kind of come in along the side of this straight edge and draw our dashes in there. Just with solid black. I'm using the straight edge because I want to keep it straight. All right. And then let's do same thing down here. Kind of varying the lines a bit. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go across the top. And I think that really kind of helps frame her in, is like she's in her little box. It's like she has stepped out into the urban wilderness, but she hasn't ventured outside her little box yet. She will, because she sees what's on the other side over here. But she is cautiously approaching that mayhem that's outside her box, right? So let's get our reds. And we're going to put in this color block here, this color block here, which really, those two pieces together just really draw you right in to the figure. Let's get those in. I used a blend of vermilion red mixed with a little bit of this one, alizarin crimson. Okay. And I'm just going to start this right where the numbers end. And then I'll go to about there. Very mathematical. And then let's do the same. Let's do one up here. She actually has a connecting another black line right here. I need another flat brush. Let's see. She has another black line that starts right here. So let's get that in. This one is solid. I mean, it doesn't really matter because this is my own design anyway, but I'm just trying to stay as true to the study. You know, like I said, there are some things that I want to change on the study, but I'm not changing everything. So, and then we just have, this line bleeds all the way out to the edge. We've got that one there. This one is not as, it's a little more subtle than that one. Okay. So I think for the most part, like I said, I probably will do, I'm going to do probably a little bit more dry brushing to help to unify it a little bit. I may do some of the antiquing gel. I don't know. But overall, I think this is a pretty good start today. And we've kept this right at an hour. So I'll tweak it. I'll play with it a little bit. I'm not going to change too much. And then starting next week, we will begin with oil paints and we will paint the figure together, y'all. And I just want to say this because I think it's important. A lot of times, if you haven't watched somebody create an oil painting before, particularly like a realist, you will have a lot of moments of doubt once I start painting, because it's just not going to look like very much after the first session. I mean, it's going to start like at the end of the first session, it will start to come together and you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. But during the first probably 30 minutes or so, you're going to be like, what the heck is she doing? So I'm going to say that to y'all to just bear with me, stick it out, and you will see the progression a little bit at a time. The real magic happens. It will happen on the final session, week 3, where we tie it all together and we do all the finishing touches. So, you know, I basically have 3 hours to paint a realistic oil painting over the course of 3 weeks. You know, it's that last hour where you start to really like put all those details together and bring everything together. So I'm going to say that to y'all, like, you know, please join for the next few weeks, and it's going to be awesome. And we're going to talk through, you're going to learn a lot. We're going to talk through the whole thing together. But, after next week, you may walk away feeling like, what the heck is she doing? But it'll be fun. I promise, y'all. And thank you for joining us today. And I hope you're as excited as I am to finish this. All right, y'all, enjoy. I will see you next time. All right, take care. Bye-bye.